So welcome to our presentation, Learning to Fly, How Angry Birds Reach the Heights of Store Performance. My name is Fabrizio Branca. I'm the lead Magento developer at AOE Media. I'm a certified Plus developer, and also I passed the front-end certification beta exam. Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about me. That's me. I used to work out of our office in Wiesbaden in Germany. That's my wife, Janine, and that's our daughter, Fiona. I took this picture from last year's presentation, so she's a little bit older, and she's even cuter than this now. Last year in summer, we moved to San Francisco. I still work for AOE, but now out of our San Francisco office. It's a great place to live and to stay, and it's a beautiful area to live. This summer, we have some news. We're going to have another baby, and we just found out it's going to be a boy. So yeah, let me quickly tell you something about AOE Media. We do open source software. We do Magento. We are a gold partner, but we also do content management. We have a search product based on Solar. We do mobile application, and yeah, we do the full stack from backend, front-end, design, everything. And we have offices we have 7 offices and 120 people worldwide. And yeah, Magento and especially like performance optimization is one of our sweet spots. Who of you saw Kian and Daniel speak at the last Magento Imagine or saw me speak at the last Meet Magento 2012 in Germany? Okay, good. There actually was another talk in the UK by Kian that was like same category. And who saw my presentation on Meet Magento 2011 about performance optimization and Varnish stuff, also in Germany? Okay, so I like to see the 2011 talk as part 1 and the 2 talks from last year as part 2, and that makes this talk somehow like the sequel, the follow-up, part 3 of the High Magento Performance. Yeah, the original title was Lessons Learned from Running a High-Performance Magento Store. They somehow changed that. I don't know why, but what I'm going to show you is like, I don't want to make this like a business shiny presentation, but I want to show you what actual problems we faced, what solutions we have. A lot of that is also available freely, so you can just grab that and apply that to your infrastructure. So who has never played Angry Birds? Is there actually somebody out there? Really? Okay. But you know Angry Birds, right? So Angry Birds, they run a shop, and they sell all kinds of stuff, merchandise stuff, plush toys, shirts, iPhone cases, but also like PC games. So we are also connected to a DRM server and handle all the licensing stuff. And the challenge with that is they have a huge social media impact. So they have over 24 million likes on Facebook, and they have more than 500,000 followers on Twitter. And they do stuff like, hello world, free shipping for everybody, of course, without telling us. And you can imagine that we have huge spikes when it comes to traffic, and we need to handle that. So same thing for when they launch new games. I mean, we know that, but still, we have to keep up with that too. A couple of numbers. We have 1 million unique visitors per day. It's not like that every single day, but especially when they launch games, we hit these numbers. We have 5,000 concurrent users, and we are optimizing for up to 10 orders per second. We're not quite there yet, but we're on our way. But still, that's the result of our actual stress tests. A quick look back. I'm not able to dig into that in detail, but if you're interested, check out the recordings of the last presentations. So this is how our infrastructure looks like. Actually, this is still very simplified. So it runs on the Amazon cloud. We use all kinds of Amazon services, and the key part is we run those server arrays. A server array is it can boot up EC2 instances completely automatically. It takes up to 5 to 10 minutes, and everything is there. And as soon as it's booted, it will be included in the load balancing and starts delivering content. We have a front-end array, a back-end array for all the back-end stuff, and a separate array that takes care of all the background processes. And then the secret ingredient is our Varnish array that dispatches and caches and everything. So all this is behind the load balancer, and this again sits behind a DNS service, Route 53. We use RDS as a cache as a database, and well, we used it too for the cache backend. And there's a couple of services we're connected to. ERP is handled by Shipwire, and then there's gift cards, CRM, and all that stuff too. So just a quick look back on how developments work. So what we do actually is we start a whole new development next to that. So we literally boot up the whole infrastructure from scratch next to it. We can access that. We can do the last manual tests. We cache, warm up all caches. And as soon as everything's done, this takes 20 to 30 minutes. We just switch the DNS to the new load balancer. And if something is wrong, we can simply switch back. But if everything is OK, we just shut down the old infrastructure. That results in 0 seconds of downtime, absolutely no lost cards or sessions or logins. So the customers browsing on the website will not notice anything when we do deployments. OK, back to today. If this blows your mind, go and check out the video. So there's like a whole talk just about that. So this was just like the quick review. Yeah, what happened since we launched that shop last year? We started with 3 stores, and we ended up adding 2 more stores. That obviously adds a lot of more configuration, especially when it comes to tax configuration, shipping. It's a shop that sells worldwide, and there's like lots of challenges there. Another thing we added is GeoIP redirection. So depending on where on the world you are, you will get redirected to the correct store, and then you still have the option to switch to another one. But the challenge here is this still has to be blazing fast and has to be cacheable. And how we did that, I'll show you that in a minute. So we started with the default theme. That actually already was the second implementation after facelift. And the last year, we added several new themes, including a mobile theme. And yeah, so now to the problems. Basically, all problems, or most of the problems, come down to growing data. So there are 2 types of growing data. The first one is like the good data, like new products, new customers, obviously new orders, but also like new CMS content, new promotions, new banners. Banners is a big thing for Rovio. So this actually shows how your shop is growing. But there's a lot of stuff that is actually just sitting there and it doesn't help at all. That's like logs in the database or in the file system. We just had a project. We saw they had a 40 gigabyte system log file. And that's obviously all data that you really don't want to have, especially if you're not looking at it, or especially if you're not using the features that rely on the data. So the goal is to get rid of that, or to not log that, or to not capture that in the first place at all. So one thing is, for example, the quotes. Magento keeps all quotes forever. Same thing with expired cache entries. Magento will not delete them. And another thing, Magento Enterprise comes with this order archive, but it will only archive orders that are completed. So check your ERP connections. For some reasons, some orders might be stuck, and some orders can also be like 20,000 or even more orders. So check those to make them all go into the order archive, and this will also reduce the data, the active data. Whenever this icons show up, this is pointing to modules that we have on GitHub. As I said before, we are all about open source, so we like to share our solutions too. And this is like 2 of those, the AOE Cache Cleaner and the AOE Quote Cleaner. So check them out if you're interested. Some of you might remember this slide. This is one from our one of our last presentations. So what we have here is the visitors hitting Varnish, Varnish acting like somehow like a firewall to protect the backend. The number of requests increased because of the stores that were added, the new products. These all result in more URLs, and that makes the hit rate obviously less effective. But at the same time, we're trying to reduce the number of hits hitting Magento to make it even more efficient. Because I mean, we have to compete with the growing data, with the good part, to keep it on the same level. There's other things we need to do. So you know what that is? That is not Pac-Man. That is the hit rate we estimated like 2 years ago when we started the thing. So we estimated that 90% of all the pages are cacheable, are static, and that obviously also could be reflected in the hit rate. And we were there, so this worked out pretty good. But as we added new features, the hit rate dropped to 80%. So new stores, more new URLs, like all kinds of campaign management, banners that result in lots of more URLs and other features, uncacheable stuff, and the hit rate dropped. But we spent a lot of time to optimize that, and we managed to increase the hit rate to 89.6%. That's a real number. And yeah, it took us a lot of time to analyze every single request that goes in and see if is this actually something dynamic. And it turns out, in most cases, it isn't. It's only like an issue of normalizing URLs. So this is what, no, so I'll come to that in a second. So you might know our solution, the AOE static, that actually allows you to do Varnish and Varnish integration. Requests are hitting Varnish. If this is not cached in Varnish, Varnish will request that from Magento, and then it will deliver the page. It will render it in the browser, and if there is like some dynamic content, this will be captured by a second request in an AJAX call. There are other solutions to that, like Varnish stuff. Our strategy is to get rid of, OK, this is AOE static. Again, check it on GitHub. Our strategy is to try to get rid of any dynamic calls at all, and there's multiple strategies to that. So one thing we could do, or we do, is instead of having full page requests, do AJAX requests as much as possible. So there is stuff that we don't need in a page, because that will make the page uncacheable, like the number of items in the cart or the login name. So we put that in. Oh, actually, that's the next point. So yeah, add to basket is nothing where we need to have a full page request. We just refresh the basket via AJAX. That works perfectly fine. Same thing with the little mini cart. This doesn't need to be embedded in the cart. We can load that on hover, and that makes it so much more cacheable and efficient. But at the same time, don't do AJAX requests where possible, because there is like cookies and local storage where you can store stuff, because there is requests hitting Magento, like adding stuff to the cart, are dynamic requests anyway. So the response of that can store stuff in the cache, in the cookie, and that makes it more efficient. You get rid of many AJAX requests and increasing the performance by that a lot. Next thing, we learned that the highway is 404 pages. They need to be cached too, and that was part of the last presentation. Somebody just deactivated one of the most popular products. While it was there, it was cached. As soon as it was not there, it was not cached, and there were thousands of requests hitting Magento. Same things for redirects. I mean, there's no reason to not cache redirects. So take care, have a close look what actually can be cached, and also like consider non-HTTP 200 pages too. Next thing, that's actually the biggest improvement, normalize URLs. You know, all those UTM parameters, Facebook, Twitter, and also like internal tools they use, they add parameters that will only be evaluated by JavaScript. We don't need to have several cache entries in Varnish for that. So normalizing them increases the hit rate a lot. So this is how we achieve the 98.6 hit rate. OK, so one challenging thing is we end up having a cache in another cache. So there's the Magento cache sitting inside the Varnish cache, and that is very efficient, but also adds a lot of complexity. When we have updates, Magento takes care of course, refreshing the cache. At the same time, we refresh the Varnish cache. That is called purging. So we sent an HTTP request to Varnish telling it this page is expired. But that's often not like very efficient, because cache operations can be very expensive. So what we do is we queue all requests. So there's the AOE async cache that will grab all requests, queue them, optimize them, bundle them, and execute them in the background. That results in a way more responsive backend. Also, the front end benefits from them. But then you queue something for the Magento cache, but Varnish is purged immediately. That obviously doesn't work, because Varnish will then request an outdated page from Magento. So this is actually why we need to push the Varnish purges also into that queue. And we have a second solution for that called AOE Varnish async cache. That's like one of the lessons we learned over the last year. Something breaks, and that's, well, sadly, very often the case when you have Varnish in place, because that adds another a whole lot more complexity. But you have to see what's going on there, and this is like one of our solutions to that problem. OK, so in the end, it comes down to bottlenecks. We have growing data. The infrastructure stays the same, so then at some point we hit some bottlenecks. And what we did first is we switched to another database. So there's this so-called high memory quadruple extra large DB instance from Amazon. That's the biggest one. So this, of course, helped, but was not enough. Then we switched to provision IOPS. And also that was a good improvement. And the next thing is Percona comes with some great tools that give you some very good hints on what to do. Also, we worked with Percona with another project, and so they make a suggestion on settings. That helped a lot, but what we ended up doing is actually this. So we made everything faster, but that was not the exact bottleneck we hit. And yeah, somebody told me this looks like an iPhone. It's not. That's the bottleneck we tried to increase. So what we ended up doing is actually this. So I mean, we still kept all the other things we did, but we added a second bottleneck. So we have an RDS instance for the cache for the normal database, and a second one for the cache backend. So back then, we thought the cache backend would be the perfect match. You can run it on a multi-cluster environment. There were some problems with two-level caching and the DB cache backend. So if you know my blog, you know about all these. And we all fixed them. So this worked pretty good. And yeah, so we doubled the throughput this way. And oh, yeah, Magento has this perfect way of having multiple database handles, but it doesn't have one for the cache backend. And AOEDB cache simply adds that one. So it's a very simple thing, but without that, you cannot do that. So if you're trying to do something like that, try our AOEDB cache module. What we did then is we got rid of MySQL for a database cache backend and switched to Colin Molnau's great Redis cache backend. It's good, it's simple, it's fast. It has tag support, so we can use that as a single level cache backend. We don't have to use the two-level caching. That introduces some other problems too. What we actually ended up doing is we had 3 instances, one for the cache backend, one for the full-page cache, and one for the sessions. And we actually run 3 different Redis instances. And then, of course, we have a redundant setup. So it's like actually more than those 3. You want to have more than 3. You want to have separate Redis instances for multiple reasons. First of all, Redis is single-threaded. So by having 3, you triple your throughput. Second thing is you probably want to have different settings for the sessions compared to the cache, because sessions, you want to persist them, but you don't want to, or you don't need to persist the cache and increase some more performance there. There's some other problem, just as a side note. Make sure that the memory commit settings on your servers are set correctly, and you will get lots of performance with that. There's, yeah, you can see some details on my blog. Second bottleneck is file I/O, especially if you host on the Amazon cloud. File operations are slow, much slower compared to actual physical development, hosting. But that's, if you know how to do it right, that shouldn't be a big problem. So you know what that is? Any clue? That is the number of PHP files grouped by location. And so we have like the local code pool, the community code pool, the core, and the lib code pools. So the developers know that there's like this auto-loading hierarchy. This will end up in looking up a core file in 2 different locations where it's probably not going to be, and in the lib file will be looked up in 3 different locations. And you can see the majority of files actually are core and lib files. I mean, you're actually not using all of them, obviously, in every single request, but still, that's an issue. Our goal is to make, yeah, so the bottleneck here is just by the huge number of requests you do on the website, on the file system. We cannot widen the file system bottleneck because that's what EC2 instances do, but we can try to reduce the numbers. So our goal is to make every single file accessible by the first request. And the solution to that is, actually there's 2 solutions. The first solution is provided by Magento, the so-called Magento compiler. But there's many problems with that. It starts copying files around. It actually goes into the files and changes stuff. So you really don't want to use that, and I think that officially that's not recommended anymore. Instead, there's the AOE class hash. We actually built a hash map for every file and store them in a serialized PHP array. This makes everything way faster. And the funny thing is, after I published that, a Magento core developer came to me and said, look at Magento 2. We did it almost the exact same way. And I like that a lot because that is somehow the proof that this has to be a good solution. So check that out. It's a good thing. It reduces the number of file requests by a lot, and this, in the end, will result in a higher performance for your web store. One of the pain points when running Magento store is always the reports. Reports will basically, they deal with so much data, and it takes such a long time to generate them. the solution we like to do is to run a read replica. RDS, using RDS, that's very simple. That's just like clicking a button and you have read replicas that's up to date and almost up to date in every point of time. It's perfect. This will offload your main database, but this will not make any reports any faster. Second thing we do, we pre-generate data like every hour. Magento does that for some reports. We added that feature for the reports where Magento doesn't do that and for all our custom reports. So every hour we pre-process the data and put them in the table. So that is like an operation that only takes like a minute or two every hour. But then when you request the report, the final report, this will speed up things a lot. And actually the last thing we do, and that's the main point, we generate all our reports in the backend. In the background. So when you hit the I want to report button in the backend, a background like a job will be scheduled and will be processed by the cron. And when this is done, this can be anything, depends on the report, between like a minute and an hour. You'll get an email with the actual report attached to it. So you don't have to wait there. I mean, even if it was only a minute, no editor wants to wait for a minute or no analyst to get his data. And so this is our solution to that problem. But then crons, that's actually one of my other sweet spots. You might know there's like two files in the Magento core, in the Magento web root. There's cron sh and cron php. Running cron sh will result in something like that. So cron sh takes care of never running two processes at the same time. But like the 1 hour running report process will block every other process. And I mean, if you have other important things that needs to be done in crons, like for an hour, we would not get any DRM licensing stuff or so. So this is not an option for us. At the same time, if you run cron php, you will end up having something like that. So Magento will start one process every minute or every 5 minutes, depends on how you configure that. You don't have any control. This can result in performance issues and also into race conditions. So you don't know what's happening, and two processes of the same type or two processes relying on the same data could be triggered. Our solution to that is the AOE scheduler, which, by the way, comes with like a nice view like this one in the backend that allows you to see what happens. We have the so-called concept of having multiple cron groups. So you can define as many cron groups you want and define what cron tasks need to be run in that group. So we have like one cron group for all the report stuff. So in that group, only one process is triggered at a time. But it's not interfering with the other cron groups. And with this, you could also have multiple worker servers to have like reports processed by one worker server and all the other stuff by other worker servers. So you can configure that by having whitelists and blacklists or any combination of that and make sure that you process everything in the background. Yeah, check out AOE Scheduler, that comes with that feature. So another big thing is code quality of modules. And they actually, they can bring your site down. It's all about them. And well, the thing now is, you know your developers, you know what they can do, you trust them, you know that they develop stuff with your quality standards, but you don't know much about the third-party stuff you're including. I'm not saying that all what I'm going to say here is restricted to third party, but we experience that actually very often it's actually the third-party things the customer wants us to include and we come up with problems with that. So yeah, and they can introduce serious bottlenecks, like in the PHP code, with different things types of things. So, and there's multiple things. One of that is they are not enterprise ready, and I don't mean like enterprise edition, but I mean enterprise ready in terms of it's okay to write a module that loads the whole product catalog and just pick one. We've seen these things, but it doesn't work if you have hundreds of thousands of products. And there's like tons of things in that category. Another thing is they are not production ready. So they might work in that specific scenario, but there's like tons of other edge cases that never have been tested. But I mean, running a shop like Angry Birds, there's like thousands, millions of users, and they will test all the edge cases for you. And then we experience problem with that too. So next thing, they're not cloud ready. And writing a module that is compatible with cloud hosting is, well, it's another thing because there's some restrictions. You cannot rely on the local file system because solutions with NFS and rsync are not an option for a serious cloud hosting. So there is no common file system in a cloud environment. But lots of modules don't take that into account at all. So they will break on an environment like ours. Another one is the bad performance that they can introduce. Some of them like talk to external services to do all kinds of stuff. And when this is the case, they have to keep up with our performance standards. And if they don't, that will bring our site down too. Or if their site is down, that might bring our site down completely too. And especially if this is just for licensing things, that's like, in my opinion, a stupid thing. I have very strong feelings when it comes to encrypted and obfuscated PHP code. We don't let any of those on our server. And yeah, the next thing, same issue, when also with like obfuscated and encrypted code, is security. And I mean, there's like malicious code and vulnerable code. So you actually don't know. It actually might be like not on purpose, but can produce a serious problem with your shop. Okay, the result is take quality assurance. Yeah, make sure you do that and do that continuously. Don't do that only once. Do it over and over again. Look at the code, do code reviews, question every single line of code, see what's going on, and every single commit can break stuff. So that's not a one-time thing. That's like part of your development process. Stay up to date with that. Next thing is do profiling. Same thing, your code, third-party code, every commit can introduce some serious performance issues, and in the end, that's like a bug that can bring your site down too. Check out our AOE profile where you can see, we can do profiles in the front end and see what's going on there in a nice visual way too. And the last thing is automate tests. A manual test is actually not valuable at all because again, next commit can break that, and you're never able to run all the manual tests for every single build. So every test that is not automated is actually not of any value. There are automated tests on different levels: PHP unit tests, integration tests, and functional tests. We use Selenium for that. Yeah. Problem with that is test cases break. You change stuff, and test cases will break. And this is the number of our tests. You see they increase over time, but that's only half of the truth. The truth is, this is the number of our green tests. So at some point, we switched from Selenium RC to Selenium 2, and Selenium 2 behaves a little different. I'm not blaming Selenium 2, it's a great thing, but all our tests were broken, or almost all. And at that point, we didn't pay any attention to the tests anymore, so testing is completely useless. And it took us some time to recover from that. Actually, as you can see, recovering was pretty easy because there's some things you need to do to get a Selenium 2 compatible, and then like half of the tests work again, some other things, and then the rest of the tests work again. And we needed some time to are back on like a green test suite. So we do a build, we wait for the tests, and if they're green, we have somehow the security that this is going to be a build that can be installed, can be deployed to production. So take testing serious, and we also have like a Selenium 2 test framework based on PHP WebDriver. It's called Menta. It's on GitHub. Check that out if you want to try out Selenium 2 testing. That's actually the important thing. There's lots of stuff for Selenium 1 out there, but well, that's a whole different story. If you're serious with that, check out Selenium 2. So lessons learned. The more components you have, and you remember our first slide, there's Magento, there's Apache, there's the cache backend, there's EC2 with load balancers, all that stuff. The number of unexpected problems also increases. So the bottom line is plan some extra time. There's lots of stuff. There's like something that looks so pretty and so easy, but then will end up taking like another week extra of your developer's time to just go into that. And there can be stuff like that in Magento, in all the Amazon stuff, or when it comes to deployment. So one lesson we learned, it always takes much longer than you expected. And yeah, so what's next? We have like a long list of ideas where we want to go to. One thing is, we still use Apache, which is okay. I mean, you remember most of the requests don't hit Magento at all, but still Nginx and PHP FPM, that's a whole other thing. So we want to go there. Also, PHP 5.4 should bring another big performance gain. So that's like our near future, one of our near future goals. Next thing is, we want to experiment a little more with the sizes of the instances. There are different variables when it comes to memory and when it comes to CPU. We want to do some more experiments to see if lots of smaller instances, how they behaved compared to less bigger instances. Also, that's a cost decision too, because it's a different thing. And when it comes to scaling, so there are multiple factors that are to be taken into account when it comes to this. Next thing is, remember there is the part of the data that we like to have. And if we experience that there is other bottlenecks, next thing we would do is to also move other stuff, to offload the database by moving other stuff to other storages. And I mean, that can be something like MySQL, but that could also be something like MongoDB. That's actually very promising. And one candidate would be the whole quotes stuff. That can be huge on a server. And offloading the database by moving that to another database could be one of our next steps. And then in our endless search for the perfect cache backend, there are some experiments we're doing with Amazon DynamoDB. Well, we're really happy with Redis, and that's so far the best thing we did. We implemented there, we added, but it looks like when you're hosting on the Amazon cloud, Amazon being another key value store, a NoSQL database, could be a very promising solution and could be a very performant cache backend. So we're playing around with that a little bit. So it's just in the experimenting phase so far. Okay, first thank you goes to our team. There's lots of smart guys working on the whole thing, and I want, even if they're not here today with us, I want to thank them remotely for all the great stuff they implemented. So big thank you, guys. And actually, that's it with my presentation. Do you have any questions?